The seaplane rocked gently on the open water, its engines humming low as it drifted under power. Noah stared out at the horizon, sweat cold on his neck. Two long boats had appeared, dark silhouettes cutting fast across the waves. His gut twisted. They were not supposed to be there. Jaime leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The boats came on without signal, without flag, without voice. No radio call answered their hails, only speed and silence. Noah's pulse quickened. Whatever was coming, it was not help. Spray burst around the approaching hulls. Figures stood upright, faces obscured, arms raised, their shouts lost in the distance. The seaplane's controls felt rigid beneath Noah's grip, the air heavy with the knowledge that this was no rescue. Survival alone remained. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss our upcoming videos. The morning sun painted the Indian Ocean in silvers and golds, its rippling surface catching every glint of light. Captain Noah Reyes adjusted his headset and glanced at the reflection of the seaplane's wings in the water below. To his right, co-pilot Jaime Malik tapped the altimeter, grinning at the milestone, flight number 100. By the end of the day, after touchdown in Djibouti, he would qualify for international captaincy. A promotion long in the making. He and Noah had flown together for over a year, carrying scientists, medics, and fragile equipment up and down the African coastline. Today's manifest was light. 3 sealed crates strapped in the hold, tagged with international markings, and stamped confidential. The paperwork hinted at satellite components, rare, valuable, and irreplaceable. The morning had unfolded smoothly with clear skies and calm water below. It felt like a routine crossing, the kind that lulled even seasoned pilots into ease. Then a red light blinked on the panel. Both men caught it at the same instant. The rudder actuator was frozen. Manual override flickered, then failed. Noah pressed on the pedals. Nothing. The rudder was gone. No resistance. Just dead weight beneath his feet. A chill steadiness settled over him, though the tension in the cabin rose sharp and heavy. Beside him, Jaime scanned the instruments, calculating the odds. Without rudder control, they could not risk a runway. Even a light crosswind could spin the aircraft into disaster. The decision came quickly. They would have to go down here on the open sea. Jaime seized the mic and transmitted the mayday. His voice tight but steady as assistance was requested, though both men knew help would not arrive before they were forced to act. Noah adjusted the flaps, setting the descent. The approach demanded precision. Anything less would send them cartwheeling across the surface, tearing the seaplane apart. The ocean spread below, deceptively calm, its glassy sheen hiding the violence beneath. Jaime gripped the seat, jaw clenched, bracing for impact. Noah kept his focus razor sharp, pushing through a gust of warm wind. The pontoon struck hard. For a moment, they bounced once, twice, and then the floats dug into the water. A huge spray of salt water exploded upward, washing across the cockpit windows. The whole aircraft shuddered like it had been punched in the stomach. Silence followed the impact. The seaplane bobbed in place, pitching with each wave. Noah's hand stayed locked on the yoke, knuckles pale, while Jaime steadied his breathing and checked the radio. The Coast Guard had answered. Help was coming, but the nearest cutter was still 3 hours out. The plane drifted east on idle power. Neither man noticed the faint flicker on the horizon, 2 black specks cutting through the shimmer of the sea. Inside, Jaime adjusted the GPS, estimating how far the currents might push them. The cabin was quiet, but for the creak of metal and the low hiss of the radios. Outside, swells slapped at the floats, nudging the aircraft off course. The hull groaned with each hit. The seaplane was not built to drift. 3 hours would be too long. If the strain grew worse, water would find its way in. Jaime studied the rudder again, weighing the only chance they had. Force it free and try to stabilize the drift before the sea broke them apart. Jaime suggested steering east towards shipping lanes, then moved aft to inspect the rudder. Crawling into the narrow service access, he found the problem. Not a break, but a jam. A scrap of insulation had come loose and lodged in the linkage, locking it in place. Removal would require shutting down the engines and opening the exterior hatch. He returned to the cockpit, dust streaking his coveralls, and the 2 men weighed their options in silence. The navigation display flickered. The waves pressed harder. The radio remained quiet. Then Noah froze, leaning forward, eyes narrowing through the windshield far to starboard. Dark shapes cut across the churning water. 3 o'clock. Jaime turned toward the directions Noah mentioned and shielded his eyes from the sun, then froze. On the distant horizon, 2 boats appeared, long, narrow silhouettes gliding low and fast over the waves. The Coast Guard was still more than 70 miles out. These vessels had arrived far too quickly. Through the binoculars, their shapes resolved into long, narrow hulls with figures standing upright. No insignia, no response, not Coast Guard. The weight of realization settled heavy in the cabin. The emergency had shifted from mechanical failure to something far more dangerous. Noah eased the throttles forward, coaxing the seaplane into motion. It lurched, lumbering across the swells like a wounded whale. Spray burst against the floats as the aircraft gathered a little speed. Behind them, the cargo rattled in its harness. 3 sealed crates marked confidential. their value unspoken yet undeniable. Ahead, the ocean stretched vast and empty. Behind, the hunters closed in. Noah did not answer. He did not have to. The seaplane plowed forward with all the grace of a fridge in a bathtub. The engine sputtered and growled against the strain, barely keeping the nose pointed east as waves slapped hard into the floats. Spray slammed against the windows. Inside the cockpit, tension coiled like a wire, ready to snap. Noah gripped the throttles, forcing the seaplane forward at a crawl, 8 knots at best. The boats behind were faster, easily doubling their speed, engines growling louder with each passing second. On the radar and on the horizon, the threat grew. 2 vessels bearing straight down without hesitation, exploiting the crippled plane's inability to maneuver. Sweat beaded on Jaime's forehead as he glanced between the chase and the crates in the hold. Each jolt made the cargo shift against its harness, a reminder of what might be drawing the pursuers closer. If the hunters believed something valuable was on board, that belief alone was enough to doom them. Jaime's pulse hammered as he slammed a hand against the console, frustration breaking through the silence of the cockpit. The Coast Guard was still an hour away, if they arrived at all. Noah stared ahead, jaw locked, forcing the plane east through the waves as the shadow of pursuit closed in. The seaplane struck a swell and the cabin pitched violently. Warning lights flickered on the panel, casting red shadows across the cockpit. Outside, the pursuers had resolved into faces, men standing upright, pointing, shouting through the binoculars. The determination in their stance was unmistakable. If they boarded, it would be over in seconds. Inside, every movement became urgent. Hatches were slammed shut and locked where possible. Doors were blocked and reinforced with straps and cargo. Every heavy item they could find, a crate, a strap, a metal case, was wedged or tied to delay entry. Improvised barricades against the encroaching threat. Outside, the boats rode the swells like predators, bouncing high and fast across the waves. Spray hissed off their bows, glittering in the sunlight, closing distance relentlessly. The seaplane lurched forward slowly, engines straining. The only defense against being overtaken, time and distance, were their fragile shields. Everything else relied on quick thinking and a bit of luck. Jaime reached the rear hatch first. It had a manual locking bar, but the mechanism was not built for brute force. He kicked a crate into place and yanked down a length of cargo net, tying it around both handles and cinching it tight. Then he dragged the toolbox across and stacked it on top, gritting his teeth as the plane shuddered beneath him. In the cockpit, Noah ran a quick systems check. Not that it mattered much. The plane was not going anywhere, but he needed to know what systems he still had. Battery power held steady. The radio still carried a signal. Noah locked the cockpit door, planting a fire extinguisher just inside the entrance. A flimsy weapon, but better than nothing. In the cabin, Jaime wrestled crates into barricades, wedging one hard against the starboard door. Back in the cockpit, Noah's chest heaved as he forced the engines to hold their shallow push east. Their rumble was drowned beneath the deeper, steadier growl of the boats behind. A glance through the side window showed one closing fast, barely a few hundred meters out. Jaime buckled himself in again, eyes fixed on the growing shadows off the beam. The first boat veered left, mirroring the drift. The second slowed, angling toward the blocked side door. Boarding was no longer a possibility. It was about to happen. The seaplane shuddered against the waves as inside. Every breath turned shallow, braced for the collision of men and steel. The sound of the boats was loud now, no longer distant. The waves crashed harder, and voices shouted just beyond the thin walls of the seaplane. The whole plane shook as the water around it boiled with movement. Jaime's pulse hammered as he fixed on the block side door. The crate wedged against it rattled with each swell, straps biting tighter into the floor mounts. A sharp knock jolted the cabin. Jaime pressed himself against the crate and peered through the narrow window. A shadow shifted just beyond the glass. A blurred figure, a hand spreading wide and slamming flat against it. The gesture carried no words, only pressure and intent. Then the real assault began. Inside, the air grew thick with the sound of stress steel and the ragged rhythm of shallow breaths. The barricade still held, but only barely. A heavy impact shook the fuselage, harder this time, rattling the cabin walls. The noise stopped abruptly, replaced by silence, then the groan of bending metal, followed by a sharp crack. The lock burst with a metallic snap. The cockpit door swung open, and 3 men surged inside, clothes dripping, faces obscured by scarves and hoods. One wore a smile that never touched his eyes. Orders came sharp and fast in a language the pilots did not understand. Ropes were looped around their wrists, drawn tight until the skin burned. Outside the cockpit, 2 more pirates were already working on the cargo. Noah strained against the rope, fingers twitching. He looked toward the overhead panel, trying to think of something, anything. But with his hands bound and 2 pirates standing inches away, there was nothing he could do. Jaime shifted back instinctively and tripped. His foot caught under the co-pilot chair and he tumbled backward straight onto the center console. Noah's elbow struck the throttle and his back hit a red switch labeled Oxygen Emergency. A siren howled through the seaplane like a foghorn, stunning everyone. The intruders turned to the cargo, barking orders, then dragged Noah and Jaime onto the rear float and into a waiting boat. The plane rocked in their wake as the pirates scrambled to unload the crates. Bound and soaked, the pilot sat helplessly as the thieves fumbled in the rising waves until horns split the horizon. A white cutter, blue, striped sharp against the sea, bore down at full speed. Searchlight swept across the chaos. Commands thundered in multiple languages. Within moments, the pirates were surrounded. A smaller Coast Guard vessel flanked them, officers swarming with practiced precision. Ropes were cut. The pilots were pulled free, steadied, and wrapped in blankets. The cargo was salvaged. The pirates cuffed. The seaplane drifted in the swells, battered but afloat. Under the stars, exhaustion settled in. Flight 100 was over, far from routine, but survived. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do not forget to leave a like, subscribe, and ring the notifications bell so you never miss amazing tales like this one.